The next morning, Max woke up with a strange feeling. For the first time in months, he was not confused. He was hurt, but he had a clear mind. He understood that emotions could not solve his problem. If he wanted to protect himself, he needed to act carefully and legally. So instead of confronting Alina, Max made a different choice. He contacted a lawyer. The meeting took place in a quiet office downtown. Max sat across from a professional who listened carefully as he explained everything. The hidden expenses, the unexplained payments, the conversations that made him question Alina's intentions. The lawyer did not judge him. He simply explained the situation. "Right now, your biggest mistake would be acting out of anger," the lawyer said. "You need to stay calm, collect information, and make decisions based on facts." Max understood. For years, he had made decisions based on love. Now he needed to make decisions based on reality. The lawyer explained that before making any major moves, Max needed to understand their financial situation completely. Every account, every payment, every important document. Nothing could be ignored. When Max returned home that evening, Alina immediately noticed something different. "You seem quiet," she said. Max looked at her and simply replied, "I've just been thinking." She smiled slightly. "About what?" But Max did not answer. For the first time, he refused to explain every thought running through his mind. And that bothered Alina. She was used to knowing exactly what Max was doing. She was used to him asking for her approval. But now, he was becoming independent. Over the next few days, Max quietly organized his documents. He reviewed their finances, saved important records, and made copies of everything related to their shared life. He did not want revenge. He did not want to destroy Alina. He simply wanted fairness. Meanwhile, Alina started noticing that something had changed. The man who once immediately agreed to every request was gone. Max no longer tried to impress her with expensive gifts. He no longer apologized every time she was upset. He no longer begged for attention. And that made her uncomfortable. One night, Alina finally asked, "Are you hiding something from me?" Max looked at her calmly. "No, I'm just finally paying attention." The answer surprised her. Because deep down, Alina knew exactly what he meant. For years, Max had ignored the warning signs. But now, he was seeing everything clearly. And as Max continued preparing for the next step, he realized something important. The hardest part was not leaving the relationship. The hardest part was accepting that the person he trusted the most had been taking advantage of his kindness. But Max was ready. The man who once thought losing Alina would destroy his life was beginning to understand something else. Sometimes losing someone is the moment you finally find yourself. As the divorce reached its final stages, the truth that Max had discovered slowly became impossible to hide. For months, Alina had tried to control the story. She told people that Max had abandoned her. She said he had changed. She wanted everyone to believe that she was the victim. But the evidence showed something different. People who knew them started remembering things they had ignored before. They remembered how Max was always the one making sacrifices. How he worked late nights to support their lifestyle. How he constantly put Alina's needs before his own. They remembered how Alina rarely talked about his dreams. Only hers. The perfect image they created began falling apart. One day, Max received a message from someone he never expected. It was one of Alina's old friends. The message was simple. "I'm sorry. I should have seen what was happening earlier." Max read it several times. For a long time, he had wondered if he was the only person who noticed the problems. Now he understood that others had noticed too. They just stayed silent. Meanwhile, Alina started facing the consequences of her choices. The lifestyle she had become dependent on was changing. The expensive purchases, the constant upgrades, the feeling of always getting what she wanted, all of it was disappearing. And for the first time, she had to face a reality she had avoided. Max was never just a source of comfort. He was a person with feelings, a person who had spent years trying to make her happy, a person she had taken for granted. Near the end of the process, Alina finally had a conversation with Max. There was no anger this time, no accusations. Just two people looking at the remains of a relationship that could have been different. "I didn't think you would actually leave," she admitted. Max looked at her quietly. "That was the problem." Alina lowered her eyes. Because she understood. She believed his love meant he would tolerate anything. She believed his kindness meant he was weak. But she had misunderstood him completely. Max was not weak. He was patient. And patience has a limit. After everything was finalized, Max walked away with a strange feeling. He was sad about the years he lost. Sad about the person he thought Alina was. But he was no longer angry. Because anger kept him connected to the past. And Max was ready to move forward. The story that once looked like a tragedy became something else. It became the story of a man who lost a relationship but found himself again. And the person who thought she would always have him learn the hardest lesson. Sometimes, when you treat someone like they are only valuable because of what they provide, one day they stop providing. And they walk away. The day Max had been preparing for finally arrived. After weeks of thinking, planning, and gathering information, he made the decision that once seemed impossible. He was going to leave. Not because he stopped caring. Not because he wanted to hurt Alina. But because he finally understood that staying in a relationship without trust was destroying him. When Max told Alina that he wanted a divorce, she looked completely shocked. For a few seconds, she simply stared at him. Then she laughed. "You're serious?" Max nodded. "Yes." Alina expected anger. She expected a fight. She expected the old Max who would panic at the idea of losing her. But he was different. Calm. Focused. Certain. "You can't just walk away," she said. Max looked at her quietly. "Actually, I can." Those 4 words changed the entire situation. For the first time, Alina realized that she no longer controlled the relationship. During the first meeting between their lawyers, Alina arrived confident. She believed everything would go her way. After all, Max had always provided for them. She assumed he would continue doing what he had always done. Giving. Accepting. Sacrificing. But she quickly discovered that things were different now. Max had prepared. He had records. Documents. Financial information. Everything had been organized carefully. When Alina's lawyer reviewed the information, the situation became much more complicated than she expected. The unexplained spending. The hidden purchases. The decisions made without Max's knowledge. All of it created questions. Questions that Alina did not want to answer. For the first time, she realized that her actions had consequences. After the meeting, Alina approached Max. "You really planned all of this?" Max shook his head. "No. I planned to save our marriage. You were the one who changed the situation." That sentence stayed with her. Because deep down, she knew he was right. She remembered all the times Max tried to talk. All the moments when he asked for honesty. All the chances he gave her. But she had believed he would always stay. She thought his love was guaranteed. She thought his patience had no limit. She was wrong. As the divorce process continued, people around them started noticing the difference. Friends who once saw Max as the lucky man with a perfect life began seeing another side of the story. They saw someone who had spent years trying to make a relationship work. Someone who had ignored his own needs. Someone who finally chose himself. And for Alina, the biggest surprise was not the legal battle. It was realizing that the person she thought would never leave had already emotionally walked away. Max was no longer fighting to keep her. He was fighting to rebuild himself. After his conversation with Daniel, Max could not stop thinking. For the first time in years, he stopped making excuses for Alina. He started looking at their relationship from the outside, as if he was watching someone else's life. And what he saw was painful. He remembered all the moments when he needed support but received nothing. When he was sick, Alina was more worried about a canceled vacation than his health. When he had problems at work, she quickly changed the conversation back to her own plans. When he felt stressed, she told him that he needed to stop being negative. But when she needed something, Max was always there. He was her solution, her safety net, her provider. The realization slowly became impossible to ignore. Max decided to test something. For the first time, he stopped immediately saying yes. When Alina mentioned buying another expensive item, he calmly said, "Maybe we should wait. We need to think about our finances." The reaction was immediate. Her smile disappeared. "You're serious?" she asked. Max nodded. "Yes. I think we should make decisions together." Alina looked at him like he had become a completely different person. "You never used to question me," she replied. That sentence stayed in his mind. Not because she was angry. Because it revealed something important. She was not upset because of the purchase. She was upset because Max was no longer blindly agreeing. Over the next few days, Alina became colder. She stopped showing affection. She spent more time away from home. She answered his messages with short replies. Max noticed that the moment he stopped providing everything she wanted, her behavior changed. And that hurt, because it confirmed his biggest fear. Maybe the love he thought they shared depended on what he could give her. One evening, Max opened their old photo album. He looked at pictures from the beginning of their relationship. Back then, things were different. Alina used to laugh with him for hours. They used to walk through the city with no expensive plans and no pressure. They were happy with simple things. So when did everything change? Or maybe the bigger question was, had Max ignored the truth because he wanted to believe in the person he loved? The next morning, something happened that completely changed his perspective. Max received a notification from his bank. There was another large payment made from their shared account. A payment he did not approve. He immediately called Alina. "Did you make this transaction?" he asked. There was a pause. "Yes," she answered. "Why didn't you tell me?" Another pause. Then she said something that shocked him. "Because I knew you would say no." Max stayed silent. Those words hurt more than any argument. She knew he would refuse. She knew it was wrong. And she did it anyway. That night, Max sat alone in their apartment, looking around the place he had worked so hard to create. For years, he thought he was building a home. For years, everyone believed Max and Alina had the kind of relationship people dreamed about. Their photos looked perfect. Expensive dinners, luxury vacations, smiling faces, and beautiful moments shared online. Friends often told them they were lucky to have found each other. But behind closed doors, things were not as perfect as they seemed. Max was the kind of man who believed love meant taking care of someone. He worked hard, saved money, and always tried to give Alina the life she wanted. He never complained when she asked for expensive gifts or when their lifestyle became more and more costly. At first, it felt natural. When Alina wanted a designer bag, Max bought it. When she dreamed about a bigger apartment, he started working extra hours. When she wanted to travel, he found a way to make it happen. He thought he was building a future with the woman he loved. Alina was charming, confident, and knew exactly how to make Max feel special. She always told him that he was different from other men. "You are the only one who truly understands me," she would say. Those words meant everything to him. Max believed that supporting his partner was part of being a good husband. He never wanted Alina to struggle. He wanted her to feel safe and happy. But slowly, something started to change. The conversations between them became less about dreams and more about money. Alina started noticing what Max could provide instead of who he was. She stopped asking how his day was. She stopped caring about his stress at work. Instead, most of their discussions were about new purchases, expensive plans, and things she wanted. Max tried to ignore it. He told himself that every relationship goes through difficult moments. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe things would get better. But deep inside, he started feeling something he had never felt before. He felt alone. One night, after coming home exhausted from another long day, Max found Alina sitting on the couch, looking at her phone. He smiled and walked toward her, hoping to talk. "Hey, how was your day?" he asked. Without looking up, she simply replied, "Did you transfer the money for the new car?" Max froze for a moment. Not because of the question itself, because he realized she didn't even ask if he was okay. That small moment stayed in his mind. For the first time, Max wondered if Alina loved him, or if she only loved the life he provided. And that question would change everything. The divorce process became more difficult than Max expected. Even though he had prepared himself emotionally, he knew that ending a marriage was never simple. There were meetings, documents, arguments, and moments when the past came back to hurt him. Alina tried to present a different version of their relationship. She told people that Max had changed. She said he had become cold and distant. She wanted everyone to believe that he was the reason their marriage was falling apart. But the facts told another story. During the legal process, the financial records became one of the most important parts of the case. Every transaction showed a pattern. Money had been spent without discussion. Decisions had been made without agreement. And many things Max had questioned for months were finally becoming clear. The lawyer explained that emotions would not decide the outcome. Evidence would. And Max had evidence. For the first time, he felt like he was not fighting against Alina. He was fighting for the truth. During one of the court meetings, Alina looked at Max differently. She expected to see the same man who once begged her to understand him. But that man was gone. Max sat quietly, confident and calm. He was no longer trying to prove that he deserved love. He already knew his own worth. Alina became frustrated. She tried to remind him of their past. "Our life together meant something," she said. Max looked at her. "It did. That's why I tried so hard to save it." The room became silent, because everyone understood the meaning behind those words. Max had not given up easily. He had stayed until staying became impossible. As the process continued, more details came out. Some people who had supported Alina began questioning her actions. Friends who once admired their lifestyle started realizing that the expensive image they saw was not the full reality. Behind the luxury and perfect photos was a relationship where one person was constantly giving and the other was constantly taking. For Alina, the hardest part was not the legal consequences. It was watching Max become someone she could no longer control. The man who once needed her approval now stood confidently on his own. After one final meeting, Max walked out of the building and stopped for a moment. The situation was not completely over yet. There were still challenges ahead. But for the first time in years, he felt free. He realized something important. Sometimes, the hardest battles are not about winning against another person. They are about winning back yourself. And Max was finally doing that. After that night, Max began paying closer attention. For years, he had looked at Alina through the eyes of someone who loved her. He noticed her beauty, her confidence, and the moments when she made him feel like the luckiest man alive. But now, he started noticing things he had ignored before. Small things. Dangerous things. Every month, Max worked hard to pay their bills, manage their savings, and keep their comfortable lifestyle running. But no matter how much money came in, Alina always found a reason why it was not enough. She wanted a newer car, a bigger home, more expensive clothes, more vacations. Every request came with the same explanation. "We deserve this," she would say. Max used to smile when he heard those words. Now, they started to sound different. One evening, Max was checking their bank account when he noticed something strange. Several large purchases had been made without him knowing. When he asked Alina about them, she acted surprised that he was even questioning it. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" she asked. "It's just money." But to Max, it was not just money. It was the result of years of work, sacrifices, and long days when he came home exhausted. He tried to explain that they needed to be more careful. Instead of understanding, Alina became defensive. "You've changed," she said. Those words confused him, because in his mind, he had not changed. He was simply starting to ask questions. Over the next few weeks, Max noticed a pattern. Whenever he agreed to buy something expensive, Alina was loving and affectionate. She would tell him how much she appreciated him. She would say he was the best husband in the world. But whenever he said no, her attitude completely changed. She became cold, distant. Sometimes, she would even make him feel guilty. "I guess I just thought you wanted me to be happy," she would say. Max hated feeling like he was disappointing her. So many times he gave in. He convinced himself that spending money was a small price to pay for keeping peace in their relationship. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. One day, Max spoke with his old friend Daniel. They met for coffee, and after a long conversation, Daniel asked a simple question. "Max, when was the last time Alina did something for you without expecting anything in return?" The question stayed silent between them. Max tried to answer, but he couldn't. He remembered all the gifts he had bought her, all the sacrifices he had made, all the times he had helped her. But he struggled to remember the last time she had done the same for him. That realization hurt more than he expected. For the first time, Max started wondering if he was not in a marriage built on love. Maybe he was in a relationship where his value was measured by what he could provide. And once that thought entered his mind, he could not ignore it anymore. After making his decision, Max became more careful. He no longer reacted emotionally every time Alina became angry. He stopped trying to convince her that he was a good husband. Instead, he started observing. He wanted to understand what was really happening behind the perfect image they showed everyone. A few days later, Max came home earlier than usual. He had finished work ahead of schedule and wanted to surprise Alina. He even stopped on the way home to buy her favorite dessert. For a brief moment, he still hoped things could return to the way they were. But when he opened the front door, he heard voices coming from the living room. It was Alina. She was talking to someone on the phone. Max was about to walk in and say hello, but then he heard his name. So he stopped. "I don't know how long I can keep doing this," Alina said. Max froze. He quietly stood near the hallway listening. "I mean, Max is a good person, but he is becoming difficult lately." There was a short pause. Then she continued. "He used to give me everything without asking questions." Max felt his heart sink. He wanted to believe he misunderstood. Maybe there was another explanation. But then he heard the next words. I just need to be careful. If he starts controlling the money, everything changes. Max felt a cold feeling inside. Controlling the money? That was how she saw it. Not as protecting their future. Not as making responsible decisions. But as taking away something she believed belonged to her. The person on the other side of the phone said something, but Max couldn't hear clearly. Then Alina laughed. I know. That's why I'm already thinking about my options. Those words made him step back. Options? Max stood there silently, trying to process what he was hearing. The woman he loved was not talking about fixing their relationship. She was talking about how to protect her lifestyle. After a few more minutes, Alina ended the call. Max walked away before she could notice him. That evening, he acted normally. He smiled. He answered her questions. He even asked how her day was. But inside, something had changed. The last bit of doubt disappeared. For years, Max had been afraid of losing Alina. Now he realized he was afraid of losing himself. He spent the night thinking about everything. The money, the lies, the manipulation. The way he had slowly become someone who worked only to maintain someone else's happiness. By morning, Max had made a final decision. He was not going to fight with anger. He was not going to create a scene. He was going to be smart. He would protect himself, his future, and everything he had worked for. For the first time in a long time, Max felt calm. Because he finally understood something important. Walking away from someone who only valued what he provided would hurt. But staying with someone who never truly valued him would hurt even more. And now, Max was ready to change his life. Months after the divorce was finalized, Max finally felt something he had not felt in a long time. Peace. The apartment was quieter. His life was simpler. But for the first time in years, everything around him belonged to him. Not because he owned expensive things. Not because he had a perfect image. But because he was finally living for himself. At the beginning, it was difficult. There were mornings when he woke up and remembered the life he used to have. The plans they made. The places they visited. The moments when he believed everything would last forever. But slowly, those memories stopped hurting. They became lessons instead. Max started focusing on things he had forgotten. His health. His friendships. His goals. The dreams he had put aside while trying to build someone else's dream. He started traveling again, but this time not to impress anyone. He spent time with people who truly cared about him. He learned to enjoy simple moments. A quiet morning. A conversation with a friend. A walk without worrying about someone else's expectations. And most importantly, Max learned something about himself. For years, he believed his value came from what he could give. The money he earned. The problems he solved. The comfort he provided. But now he understood that his value was never connected to those things. He was valuable because of who he was. Meanwhile, Alina's life had changed completely. The lifestyle she once considered normal was gone. She had to learn how to stand on her own. She had lost the person who always protected her from consequences. And although Max never wished her harm, he knew one thing. Sometimes people only understand your importance after they lose access to everything you gave them. 1 year after everything ended, Max returned to a place where he and Alina once celebrated their anniversary. He stood there for a moment, remembering the past. But this time, he did not feel sadness. He felt gratitude. Not for the pain, but for the lesson. That chapter of his life had taught him something he would never forget. Love should never feel like a transaction. A relationship should not be built on what one person can provide and the other person can receive. Real love requires respect, honesty, and two people choosing each other every day. Max walked away from that place with a smile. He had lost the life he thought he wanted, but he gained the life he truly needed. The woman who once saw him as just a wallet finally understood the truth. Max was never valuable because of his money. He was valuable because he was Max. And when he finally walked away, he found himself again. Over the next few weeks, Max quietly prepared himself for the future. He continued living in the same house with Alina, but everything felt different. Before, he would react to every argument. Now he stayed calm. Before, he would explain himself again and again. Now, he listened more than he spoke. Alina noticed the change immediately. The man who once tried so hard to keep her happy was no longer chasing her approval, and she did not know how to handle it. Meanwhile, Max continued collecting information. With the help of his lawyer, he organized financial records, reviewed past transactions, and documented important conversations. Every detail mattered. Every unexplained expense. Every unusual payment. Every moment when money disappeared without discussion. The more Max discovered, the more he realized how much he had ignored. There were purchases he never knew about, subscriptions he never approved, plans Alina had made without involving him. It was not just about money anymore. It was about trust. The foundation of their relationship had been slowly breaking for years. One evening, Alina noticed some documents on Max's desk. She immediately became suspicious. "What are those?" she asked. Max looked up calmly. "Just some personal paperwork." Her expression changed. "Why are you suddenly acting like you don't trust me?" The question was interesting to Max, because for the first time, he realized she was not asking because she was hurt. She was worried. She was afraid he was discovering the truth. "I think trust works both ways," Max replied. Those words made the room completely silent. Alina was not used to hearing that from him. She tried to turn the situation around. "You're making me feel like I'm the bad person here." But Max did not argue. He simply said, "I'm trying to understand what happened to us." That answer frustrated her even more. She wanted the old Max back. The man who apologized first. The man who avoided conflict. The man who gave in. But that version of him was disappearing. As the days passed, Alina became more desperate to regain control. She started acting kinder. She suddenly wanted to spend more time together. She talked about memories from the beginning of their relationship. She reminded Max of all the good moments. But Max saw something he had never seen before. The kindness appeared only when she felt she was losing something. And that realization changed everything. One night, Alina asked him, "Do you still love me?" Max stayed quiet for a moment, because the answer was complicated. He still cared about her. He still remembered the woman he first fell in love with. But he also knew that love without respect could not survive. "I don't know anymore," he finally said. For Alina, those words were a shock. Because for the first time, she understood that Max was not just upset. He was done pretending. And as the truth slowly came closer, Alina began to realize something terrifying.